The morning sun peeked through the blinds of the Hartley family's luxurious suburban home in Austin, Texas. Amelia Hartley, an ambitious entrepreneur and mother of 10-year-old Ethan, sat nervously at the dining table. Her perfectly manicured fingers fidgeted with the corner of a sealed envelope as her husband, Jacob, a high-profile corporate lawyer, paced back and forth behind her. "Are you going to open it? Amelia, we need to know," Jacob urged, his voice a mix of concern and impatience. Amelia hesitated, her heart racing. It was supposed to be just a routine DNA test, something she had reluctantly agreed to after Ethan's recent health issues had led to questions about compatibility for a possible treatment. But now, holding the results in her trembling hands, she felt as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She tore the envelope open, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes scanned the paper, and everything around her seemed to freeze. "Jacob, this says Ethan isn't our biological son," Amelia whispered, her voice cracking. Her wide, tear-filled eyes locked onto Jacob, whose face turned pale with shock. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of the clock ticking in the background. Meanwhile, in a modest apartment on the outskirts of Austin, Rachel Thompson struggled to juggle breakfast for her 3 children before rushing to her job as a nurse. Her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, sat at the table eating cereal, humming a cheerful tune. Rachel's phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. It was a call from the hospital where Lily was born. Confused but curious, she answered. "Ms. Thompson, this is Dr. Keller from St. Mary's Hospital," a voice began. "I don't know how to say this, but we've discovered something in our records that you need to be aware of. It's about your daughter, Lily. There might have been a mix-up at the hospital when she was born." Rachel's face froze as the words sank in. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling. "There's a possibility that Lily is not your biological daughter." "Doctor," Keller said gently, "we're reaching out to another family as well. We'll need to confirm with further testing, but the hospital is taking this matter very seriously." Rachel's world spun as she sat down. Clutching the phone, her gaze fell on Lily, who looked up at her with an innocent smile, completely unaware of the bombshell that had just been dropped. Amelia and Jacob grappling with the realization that Ethan might not be their son, and Rachel struggling to process the possibility that Lily was born to another family. Tension builds. Questions swirl in their minds. Who are these other people? How did this happen? What does this mean for the children they've raised and loved for a decade? If this story has already captured your attention, there's so much more to come. Will these families choose love over biology? What would you do if you were in their shoes? Don't miss the rest of this incredible journey. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who loves a good story, and subscribe to our channel. Heat Stories. For more heartfelt and thought-provoking content, let's dive deeper together. For 10 years, 2 families, living vastly different lives, had no idea their worlds were connected by a single devastating mistake. Before the truth shattered their realities, life seemed ordinary, perhaps even ideal, in its own way. Let me take you back to see what their lives looked like before the revelation. In the Hartley household, life was picture perfect, at least on the surface. Amelia Hartley was a driven businesswoman, the founder of a thriving tech startup. Her days were meticulously planned, filled with meetings, deadlines, and endless responsibilities. But no matter how busy, her evenings were reserved for her son, Ethan, her miracle boy, as she often called him. Jacob Hartley, her husband, was a man of precision and success. A renowned corporate lawyer, Jacob prided himself on being a provider and protector. He adored Ethan, but often struggled to connect with him on a deeper level. Ethan, a quiet and creative soul, didn't share Jacob's passion for structure and discipline. Instead, he loved art, music, and the freedom to explore his imagination. While Amelia and Jacob poured their energy into ensuring Ethan had the best of everything, schools, tutors, extracurriculars, they couldn't help but notice that something always felt slightly off. Ethan's quiet nature sometimes clashed with the high-pressure environment they lived in. There were whispers from extended family, comments about how Ethan didn't look like a Hartley. But Amelia brushed them aside, calling them absurd. On the other side of town, Rachel Thompson's life looked nothing like Amelia's. A single mother of 3, Rachel worked long hours as a nurse to provide for her children. Her days were chaotic, filled with the hum of family life, homework help, packing lunches, and rushing to soccer practices. Despite the hustle, Rachel's home was warm, bursting with love and laughter. Lily, her 10-year-old daughter, was the shining light of the Thompson family. Spirited and curious, Lily had a knack for bringing people together. She was the kind of child who made friends wherever she went, her laughter echoing through their modest apartment. Rachel often marveled at how effortlessly Lily carried herself, her confidence and determination shining through even in the toughest of times. Unlike Ethan, who had access to everything money could buy, Lily grew up knowing the value of hard work and resourcefulness. She didn't have the latest gadgets or designer clothes, but she had something Ethan lacked: a deep connection with her siblings and a profound sense of belonging in her little world. Rachel would often think, "She's my rock," never once questioning the bond they shared. For 10 years, these two families moved forward, each with their own joys and struggles. The Hartleys enjoyed privilege and opportunity, but their home sometimes felt like a stage, polished and rehearsed. Meanwhile, the Thompsons found strength and unity, even when faced with life's challenges. Their love for one another was raw, unfiltered, and deeply rooted. Little did they know, the threads of their lives were tangled in ways they couldn't imagine. The son the Hartleys had raised with such care wasn't theirs. The daughter Rachel had poured her heart into wasn't hers. And yet, both Ethan and Lily were deeply loved, nurtured, and cherished. As the families navigated their days, hints of the truth lingered in the shadows, subtle and almost imperceptible. For the Hartleys, it was the gnawing feeling that Ethan's gentle spirit seemed out of sync with their driven, competitive nature. For the Thompsons, it was the occasional question from strangers about Lily's distinct features, comments that Rachel always dismissed with a smile. Despite their differences, there was an invisible thread tying these two families together, a mistake made a decade ago in the bustling maternity ward of St. Mary's Hospital. At that moment, as Amelia and Rachel held their newborns for the first time, they had no reason to suspect anything was amiss. The mix-up went unnoticed, and life unfolded as it always does, with its ups and downs, joys and challenges. But as we now know, the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. For the Hartleys and the Thompsons, that truth was about to upend everything they thought they knew about family, love, and identity. It all started with a routine doctor's visit for Ethan. Amelia had taken him to their family physician for what seemed like a simple cold, but the conversation quickly turned serious. The doctor, reviewing Ethan's medical history, raised an eyebrow. "Has anyone in your family ever had issues with blood compatibility?" While the doctor asked, his voice carefully neutral. Amelia hesitated. "Not that I'm aware of." "Why?" While the doctor explained that Ethan's blood type didn't match either hers or Jacob's. A rare anomaly that could sometimes happen due to medical errors in recording blood types at birth. But the possibility of something deeper lingered in Amelia's mind as she drove home. Could this be why Ethan always seemed different? She dismissed the thought, chalking it up to paranoia, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling. She began noticing small things: Ethan's features, his personality, his interests, also unlike her or Jacob. And when Jacob mentioned casually one evening, "You know, Ethan's got your creativity, but he doesn't really have your drive," it struck a nerve. What if there was a reason for that? Across town, Rachel Thompson had her own moment of doubt, sparked by a well-meaning comment from her mother. "Lily's so beautiful," her mother said, admiring her granddaughter one afternoon. "But she doesn't really look like you or anyone in the family." "Does she?" Rachel laughed it off, as she always did. But the word stayed with her. Later that night, as she was braiding Lily's hair, She found herself studying her daughter's face, the shape of her nose, the color of her eyes. They were familiar, but not in the way Rachel expected. Was it just her imagination, or was there something she had overlooked for years? Around the same time, Lily began asking questions of her own. "Mom, do you think I'm like Grandma?" she asked one evening while they were watching old family videos. "Because sometimes I feel like I'm different," Rachel reassured her. But inside, she felt a pang of unease. Was there a deeper truth that she had been too afraid to see? And then, the call came. It was a Wednesday morning, an ordinary day in every other sense. Amelia was in her office, reviewing a proposal, when her assistant knocked on the door with a phone in hand. "Mrs. Hartley, there's a call from St. Mary's Hospital. They said it's urgent." Amelia's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't thought about St. Mary's since the day Ethan was born. Why would they be calling now? She took the phone, her voice steady but cautious. "Mrs. Hartley," the voice on the other end began. "This is Dr. Keller, the chief of pediatrics at St. Mary's. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. We've uncovered an error in our records from a decade ago, involving your son, Ethan." Meanwhile, Rachel received a similar call, the words hitting her like a freight train. "We believe there may have been a mix-up at the hospital when your daughter, Lily, was born," the doctor explained. Rachel's mind reeled, her grip tightening on the phone as her knees buckled. For both mothers, time seemed to stand still. The world they knew, the families they had built, were suddenly cast into doubt. What did this mean? And how could something so unthinkable have happened? Over the next few days, both families were sent the hospital's findings, documents detailing the timeline of events, birth records, and early photographs of the babies in the nursery. The evidence was clear but impossible to comprehend. Ethan and Lily had been switched at birth. Amelia pored over the documents late into the night, her emotions swinging wildly between anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. Jacob, ever the pragmatist, immediately began looking into legal recourse. But even he seemed shaken by the magnitude of the mistake. Rachel, on the other hand, found herself consumed by guilt. Had she failed Lily by not noticing sooner? And what about Ethan, the boy she had unknowingly left behind? The weight of these questions kept her awake, staring at the ceiling, night after night. Eventually, both families were asked to come in for a meeting at the hospital. It was the first time they would come face to face, united by the same shocking truth. Amelia and Jacob arrived at the hospital conference room, their polished appearance masking the storm raging inside them. Rachel walked in moments later, holding Lily's hand, her face pale but determined. The room was tense, the air thick with unspoken emotions. The hospital administrator began to speak, offering apologies and explanations, but the words felt hollow. For Amelia, Jacob, Rachel, and even the children, nothing could erase the enormity of what had happened. As the meeting unfolded, Ethan and Lily exchanged shy, curious glances. They didn't understand the full weight of the situation, but there was an unmistakable connection between them, something that transcended the words being spoken around them. By the end of the meeting, the hospital offered to arrange further DNA testing to confirm the findings, but the truth was already undeniable. The families left that day with more questions than answers, their lives forever changed. The meeting was set at St. Mary's Hospital, the very place where the unimaginable mistake had occurred 10 years earlier. Amelia and Jacob Hartley arrived first, their polished demeanor masking the emotional storm inside. Amelia clutched Jacob's hand tightly as they entered the conference room, her eyes scanning the sterile environment that now felt tainted by betrayal. Jacob, always composed, carried a briefcase filled with legal documents, ready for battle if needed. Minutes later, Rachel Thompson walked in with Lily by her side. Rachel's face was pale, her shoulders tense, but she held her head high. Lily, holding her mother's hand, looked around the room with a mix of curiosity and confusion. To her, this was just another hospital visit. Ethan entered with Amelia and Jacob's nanny trailing behind, his quiet demeanor giving away his nervousness. For a moment, silence filled the room as the two families faced each other. It was a surreal moment, heavy with emotions that no one dared to express. The hospital administrator, Dr. Keller, stepped forward, breaking the silence. "Thank you all for coming today. I know this is a difficult situation, and we deeply regret the events that have brought us here. Our priority is to support both families as you navigate this." Rachel was the first to speak. Her voice trembled but was filled with sincerity. "I don't even know where to begin. This feels unreal, but I want you to know, we love Lily more than anything. She's our world." Amelia nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "We feel the same way about Ethan. He's been our everything for the past 10 years. I can't even process how this happened." The room grew quiet again as the gravity of their shared reality set in. Ethan and Lily exchanged shy glances, their curiosity palpable. To them, this meeting was less about the past and more about the people sitting across from them. As the adults grappled with their emotions, Dr. Keller suggested a softer approach. "Perhaps the children can spend a few minutes together while we continue this conversation," he offered gently. Ethan and Lily were encouraged to sit at a nearby table with a few board games, while their parents remained in the room. Initially, the children were hesitant, unsure of how to interact with someone they'd just met. But soon, Lily's natural charm broke through the tension. "Do you like chess?" Lily asked, holding up a game board. Ethan nodded shyly, and within moments, the two were engrossed in a game. Their quiet laughter and shared smiles brought a rare sense of warmth to an otherwise tense meeting. Watching from across the room, Amelia whispered to Jacob, "Look at them. They're so natural together." Rachel, overhearing, added softly, "Maybe they were meant to meet." No matter what, it was a sentiment that hung in the air, both comforting and painful. As the children bonded, the adults turned their attention to the difficult questions that lay ahead. "What happens now?" Jacob asked, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "How do we move forward?" Rachel took a deep breath. "I don't think there's a right answer to any of this, but we need to focus on what's best for the kids. They've both had good lives, and I don't want to take anything away from that." Amelia nodded. "I agree, but I want to get to know Lily. She's my daughter, and I want you to get to know Ethan. He's your son." It was a simple yet profound statement, one that laid the foundation for what would come next. The families agreed to take things one step at a time, starting with regular meetings to allow the children to bond and for everyone to adjust to their new reality. As the meeting came to an end, it was time for the families to part ways. Ethan hesitated, glancing back at Lily as the nanny gently guided him toward the door. Lily waved, her usual cheerfulness tinged with a hint of sadness. Rachel hugged Lily tightly as they walked to their car, her mind racing with thoughts about the future. Would Lily resent her one day for not realizing the truth sooner? Would Ethan feel like a stranger, or would they form a bond over time? For Amelia and Jacob, the drive home was filled with a heavy silence. Amelia stared out the window, tears streaming down her face. "How do we even begin to explain this to Ethan?" she asked softly. Jacob didn't have an answer. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his mind occupied with the same question. They had entered uncharted territory, and the path forward was anything but clear. Back in their immaculate suburban home, the Hartleys tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the tension was palpable. Amelia spent hours in her home office, staring at Ethan's baby photos, questioning everything she thought she knew. "He's still our son," Jacob said one evening, attempting to reassure her as they sat at the dinner table, but his words felt hollow. Ethan sat quietly, picking at his food, sensing the unease in the room. Amelia finally broke. "Jacob, how can we pretend everything is fine? There's another family out there raising our daughter. How do we just move on?" Jacob sighed deeply. "I don't know, but I do know that walking away from Ethan is not an option." Well, it was the first of many arguments. Amelia wanted to involve Ethan more in the process, to tell him the truth, but Jacob insisted on shielding him for as long as possible. "He's only 10, Jacob argued. He won't understand. Not yet. Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The more they delayed, the harder it would be for Ethan to process the truth. Meanwhile, Rachel was grappling with her own guilt and fear. She sat on the couch one night, staring at Lily's homework spread out on the coffee table. Her daughter's bubbly voice filled the room as she talked about her day at school. Completely unaware of the storm brewing in her mother's heart, Rachel's sister, Melissa, came over to lend support. "You've done everything for Lily," Melissa said, trying to comfort her. "She's your daughter, no matter what. Blood doesn't change that." Rachel shook her head. "But it's not just about me. There's Ethan. He's out there, living a life so different from what he would have had with us. How can I ignore that?" Melissa paused. "Do you want to fight for him? To bring him here?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I just want what's best for both of them. But how do you figure out what that even is?" For Lily, things started to feel different at home. Rachel's sudden mood swings and late-night phone calls weren't lost on her. "Mom, is something wrong?" she asked one evening, her voice small and uncertain. Rachel hesitated, then knelt down in front of her daughter. "Everything's okay, sweetheart. I just have a lot on my mind, but no matter what, I'm always here for you." The weekly meetings between the two families became a battleground of emotions. At first, they tried to remain civil, discussing plans for the children to spend time together, but it wasn't long before resentment bubbled to the surface. "You've had 10 years with our daughter," Amelia said during one heated exchange. "We deserve time to know her too." Rachel bristled. "And what about Ethan? Do you think it's easy knowing you've been raising him while we've been struggling to make ends meet?" Jacob tried to mediate. "This isn't about money. It's about doing what's right for the kids. And what does that even mean?" Rachel shot back. "Switching them back like it's some kind of trade?" The arguments often ended with both families retreating to their corners, feeling more divided than ever. But amidst the chaos, there were moments of connection, small, fragile bridges that hinted at the possibility of healing. While the adults wrestled with their emotions, Ethan and Lily began forming a quiet bond. During one visit, they sat together on the floor of the Hartleys' living room, building a Lego city. "Do you think we're supposed to switch places?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice hesitant. Lily paused, holding a tiny Lego car in her hand. "I don't know, but I think it's cool that we get to know each other. Well, it's like having a new best friend." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it's weird too." Lily nodded. "Really weird." They both laughed, a sound that brought a brief smile to their parents' faces as they watched from a distance. The children's resilience and openness offered a stark contrast to the adults' turmoil. It was a reminder that, even in the face of unimaginable circumstances, there was still room for hope. The tension reached a breaking point during a joint family counseling session arranged by Dr. Keller. The session was meant to provide a safe space for open dialogue, but it quickly spiraled into an emotional confrontation. "You don't understand what it's like to be in our position," Amelia said, her voice shaking. "We've given Ethan everything, and now we're supposed to just share him?" Rachel fired back. "And what about Lily? She's not a possession. Amelia, she's a person, and she's my daughter, no matter what some DNA test says." But the counselor intervened, urging them to focus on their shared goals, the well-being of the children. "This isn't about winning or losing," she said firmly. "It's about finding a way forward that honors the love you've given and received, while building a future that includes both families." The words struck a chord, breaking through the walls of anger and pain. For the first time, both families began to consider the possibility of cooperation instead of conflict. By the end of the session, a tentative agreement was reached. Ethan and Lily would spend more time together, alternating weekends between the two families. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As they left the session, Amelia and Rachel exchanged a brief, understanding glance. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step toward mutual respect. For the first time, they realized that their shared love for the children could be the foundation for something stronger than the mistakes of the past. The first step in their healing journey was to bring Ethan and Lily closer together. At the recommendation of their counselor, the families organized joint outings, neutral ground where the children could bond, free from the weight of adult conflicts. One sunny afternoon, the two families met at a park. Ethan, hesitant at first, stuck close to Amelia while Lily ran ahead, eager to explore. Rachel encouraged her daughter. "Why don't you show Ethan the swings?" Lily turned and waved him over. "Come on, it's fun," she called out, her enthusiasm infectious. Slowly, Ethan followed. At first, they played side by side in silence, but soon their laughter filled the air as they competed to see who could swing higher. Watching from a distance, Rachel and Amelia exchanged a tentative smile, perhaps the first genuine one since the ordeal began. "They seem happy," Rachel said softly. Amelia nodded. "Happier than I expected. Maybe they'll show us how to do this." As weeks turned into months, the families started spending more time together, not just for the children's sake, but for their own. Rachel invited the Hartleys over for dinner one evening. A modest yet heartfelt gesture. The contrast between their lifestyles was striking. "It's not much," Rachel said apologetically, as she served spaghetti at the kitchen table. "It's perfect," Amelia replied, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. For the first time, she felt a glimpse of the warmth that defined Rachel's world. Jacob, who rarely let his guard down, found himself laughing at Lily's jokes, while Rachel noticed how naturally Ethan fit in with her other children. Slowly, the lines between the two families began to blur. Despite the progress, the journey was far from smooth. Tension still bubbled beneath the surface, especially during moments that reminded them of what they had lost. One such moment came during Ethan's birthday party, hosted by the Hartleys. It was a grand event, complete with decorations, a magician, and an elaborate cake. Rachel and Lily were invited. But as they walked through the Hartleys' sprawling home, Rachel couldn't help but feel a pang of resentment. This is the life Ethan could have had, she thought. What kind of opportunities has Lily missed? Amelia, sensing Rachel's discomfort, approached her. "I know this is hard. I think about what could have been every day." Rachel looked at her, the vulnerability in Amelia's voice catching her off guard. "Me too," she admitted. "But maybe we can focus on what's ahead instead of what we've lost." It was a simple exchange, but it marked a turning point. Forgiveness wasn't something that happened all at once. It was a series of small steps, moments of understanding that slowly chipped away at the pain. While the adults wrestled with their emotions, Ethan and Lily seemed to thrive in their new dynamic. They started looking forward to their shared weekends, creating their own traditions. One rainy afternoon at Rachel's apartment, they built a fort out of blankets and spent hours telling each other stories. "Do you think we're like twins?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Ethan grinned. "Maybe, but cooler." Their bond became a source of joy and healing for everyone around them. Seeing the children happy reminded the parents of what truly mattered. The mistakes of the past couldn't be undone, but the future was still theirs to shape. One of the most pivotal moments in their journey came during a family therapy session. The counselor asked each parent to share what they had learned about love and family through this experience. Rachel spoke first, her voice steady but emotional. "I've learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about the love and care we give every day. And no matter what happens, Lily will always be my daughter." Amelia followed, tears streaming down her face. "I've learned that love doesn't have limits. Ethan is my son, and he always will be. But now, I also have room in my heart for Lily and for Rachel and her family." It was a powerful moment, one that brought both families closer together. The counselor smiled. "You've all come so far. This isn't the end of your journey, but it's a beautiful beginning." Determined to solidify their bond, the family started creating new traditions together. They hosted joint holiday celebrations, went on family picnics, and even planned a weekend getaway to a nearby lake. During one of these trips, Jacob surprised everyone by suggesting a group photo. "It's about time we capture this crazy, beautiful family," he said with a rare smile. as they gathered together. With Ethan and Lily front and center, Rachel joked, "We're like one big, blended family now." Amelia laughed. "Blended is an understatement, but I wouldn't have it any other way." Rhyme didn't erase the pain or the mistakes, but it softened the edges. Rachel and Amelia found themselves texting each other for advice, while Jacob and Rachel's brother bonded over their shared love of football. The families began to feel like an extension of one another, rather than separate entities bound by a mistake. Ethan and Lily's bond only grew stronger. They referred to each other as siblings, a label that felt right in every way that mattered. Their friendship became a testament to the power of love and resilience. One evening, Amelia and Jacob sat at their kitchen table, papers spread out in front of them. Legal documents, parenting plans, and even counseling reports lay scattered across the polished surface. The weight of their options felt suffocating. "I don't want this to be about winning or losing," Amelia said quietly, her voice breaking the silence. "Ethan and Lily deserve more than that." Jacob nodded. "Then what do we do? Split our time forever? That doesn't feel like a solution." Meanwhile, at the Thompson apartment, Rachel was having a similar conversation with her sister. "Melissa, I just want what's best for Lily," Rachel said, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "But what does that even mean? Do I fight to keep her close? Or do I let her go?" Melissa placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "Maybe it's not about letting go. Maybe it's about finding a way to hold on together." The next day, Amelia reached out to Rachel. "Can we meet? Just the two of us?" she asked. Rachel hesitated but agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, far from the chaos of their daily lives. As they sat across from each other, Amelia took a deep breath. "I've been thinking," Amelia began. "What if we stopped trying to split the kids between us and started thinking about how to bring them together?" Rachel furrowed her brow. "What do you mean?" What if we became one family? Not in the traditional sense, but something new, something that works for us," Amelia explained. "Ethan and Lily clearly love spending time together. Maybe we can create a life where they don't have to choose." Rachel was silent for a moment, letting the idea sink in. It was unconventional, even daunting, but there was a logic and a heart to it that she couldn't deny. Amelia and Rachel decided to bring the idea to the rest of their families. They organized a meeting at a neutral location, a community center with a warm, inviting space where everyone could feel at ease. Ethan and Lily sat together, exchanging excited whispers while the adults discussed the proposal. Jacob, ever the pragmatist, raised concerns. How would this even work? "Two families sharing responsibility? It's complicated." "Of course it's complicated," Amelia replied. "But isn't it worth it?" "For Ethan and Lily?" Rachel chimed in. "We're not talking about living together or merging lives completely. But what if we committed to co-parenting in a way that puts the kids first? Shared holidays, family trips, even joint decisions about their future," Jacob sighed. "It's not a traditional solution." "Nothing about this is traditional," Rachel countered. "But it's better than tearing them apart." After hours of discussion, laughter, and even a few tears, both families agreed to give it a try. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was a start, a courageous step toward redefining what family could be. The weeks that followed were challenging but rewarding. The families began to merge their lives in small, deliberate ways. Weekend outings became a shared activity, with both sets of parents attending soccer games and school events. For Ethan and Lily, the transition felt natural. They were thrilled to have both families supporting them, and their bond only grew stronger. They often joked about being the luckiest kids in the world, with double the love and support. One particularly memorable moment came during a joint family dinner. As everyone gathered around the table, Ethan looked up and said, "It feels like we're one big team now." His words brought smiles and a few tears to everyone's faces. Of course, the journey wasn't without its struggles. There were disagreements about schedules, parenting styles, and even simple things like holiday traditions. But what set this new family dynamic apart was their commitment to open communication. One heated debate about summer vacation plans ended with Amelia suggesting a family meeting. "Let's sit down and figure this out together," she said. And they did. Each time conflict arose, they tackled it head-on, finding solutions that honored their shared goals. Over time, these challenges became opportunities for growth. The families learned to trust one another, to lean on each other in ways they never thought possible. The true test of their new dynamic came when Lily faced a health scare, a sudden asthma attack that landed her in the hospital. Both families rushed to her side, their shared love and concern overriding any lingering tensions. As they sat together in the waiting room, Rachel turned to Amelia. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Amelia squeezed Rachel's hand. "We're in this together." Always. It was a moment that solidified their bond, a reminder that, despite their differences, they were united by something greater than themselves. Months later, the families gathered for a special ceremony at the park where Ethan and Lily had first played together. It wasn't a formal event, just a simple gathering to celebrate their journey. Jacob stood and raised a glass. "To family," he said, his voice steady. "Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you choose, because that's what we've done here." "We've chosen each other," Rachel added. "And no matter what comes next, I know we'll face it together." Ethan and Lily beamed as they stood between their parents, holding hands. For them, this was the best of both worlds, a life filled with love, laughter, and the support of not one, but two families. As time passed, the Hartleys and Thompsons settled into their shared lives. They didn't see themselves as two separate families anymore, but as one interconnected unit. Holidays were no longer a source of tension. They were a celebration of their unique bond. Thanksgiving became a particularly special tradition. Every year, they gathered around one big table, with Ethan and Lily taking turns saying what they were most thankful for. "I'm thankful for having two amazing moms and dads," Lily said during one such gathering, her smile lighting up the room. "And I'm thankful that I have a sister now," Ethan added, earning a chorus of laughter and applause from everyone around the table. Their words were a poignant reminder of how far they had come, and how much love they had built along the way. In quiet moments, both Amelia and Rachel often reflected on the journey they had taken. For Amelia, it was a lesson in humility and growth. "I used to think family was about control, about making everything perfect," she confided to Rachel one evening. "But now I see it's about love, messy, complicated, beautiful love." Rachel nodded. "And I've learned that even when life throws you something unimaginable, there's always a way to find strength, especially when you're not alone." Jacob, who had been so guarded in the beginning, found himself embracing his role in this unconventional family with surprising ease. He became a mentor to Lily, teaching her about determination and grit, while Ethan thrived under Rachel's nurturing care. Ethan and Lily grew closer with each passing day. They weren't just siblings, they were best friends. Together, they dreamed about their future, imagining all the adventures they would share. "I think we should write a book about our story one day," Lily said as they lay under the stars during a family camping trip. Ethan grinned. "Or make a movie. People would love it," while their parents chuckled overhearing their conversation. But deep down, they knew the kids were right. Their story was one of hope, one that deserved to be told. The story came full circle on a bright spring day, as both families gathered for a special celebration in the park. It was a day to honor their journey, to acknowledge the pain and joy that had brought them to this moment, and to look forward to the future. They planted a tree together, a symbol of their unity, growth, and resilience. As they stood around the newly planted sapling, Amelia spoke softly. "This tree will grow strong, just like us. It will weather storms, just like we have. And it will remind us every day of the love we've shared and the family we've built." Rachel added, "It's not about where we started. It's about where we're going." Together, run. As the families walked away from the park, hand in hand, they knew their journey was far from over. But they also knew that together, they could face whatever came next. The past no longer defined them, love did, and with that love, they were ready to embrace the future. This incredible journey of two families coming together reminds us all of the power of love, forgiveness, and resilience. What would you have done if you were in their shoes? Could you redefine family the way they did? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with someone who might need a little inspiration, and subscribe to Heat Stories for more tales that celebrate the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. Let's keep this conversation going and continue exploring what makes family truly special.